Hello and welcome to today's edition of Velocity Kinetics. Now today I've got a few odds and ends I need to do, got places I need to go, but what we're looking at discussing today, the history of the car. Now not as in, it all began in such and such year with such and such inventor, That is not how we are going about this one. What I mean about the history of the car, for the most part it's been petrol or diesel for pretty much the entire, for most of the time the car's been in existence. So for the most part the car's been pretty much petrol or diesel. They've been forays into electric originally. There was also steam and coal and you name it, they've tried it.
After 400 yards, leave the roundabout at the third exit and follow the A1300.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you my sat-nav's on. It's because I've not been where I've got to pick Sarah up from. Where I've got to pick Sarah up from. I've not been that direction for a while, so I just can't remember. Well, you're a bit deep, aren't you? I just can't remember where the whereabouts I need to go. I know most of the way. There's just a couple of turnings I just can't get right in my head. So you might hear
leave the roundabout at the third exit.
You might hear what we affectionately call Gimli interfering or interrupting. Now, what I'm talking about the history of the car, like I said, it's been powered by several different things during its lifetime, but for the most part it's been petrol. And in some ways there'll be gasoline or diesel power in cars for forever and a day. That's just the way in some ways that is just the way it is going to be. Now, with petrol prices going up and diesel prices going up and the price of oil going up faster than Donald Trump's demands for fake tan, alternatives need to be sought, but also because oil drilling is not that kind to the environment. When it goes wrong, it really does go wrong. I don't just mean like Event Horizon, I mean just in general the environmental impacts from an oil spill are just catastrophic. So the car finds itself at a unique point that we will probably
after 400 yards, leave the roundabout at the first exit and follow the A194.
What is it with sat-navs? You can't just set them to start from a certain point. They've always got to be either from the beginning of the journey or you set it up too late. You can't just set it for the bit you want it for.
Leave the roundabout at the first exit.
But this is something that we will, as a generation, probably never experience again. It's something that 2 or 3 previous generations will never have experienced that much of either. Whilst there's always been attempts to try and change the shape of the car, for safety, for style, for economics, ergonomics, you name it, they've always retained pretty much the same shape. So even things like that C-Max has just gone by, that was a new attempt at a shape of a car. And then you've got things like that Golf, that's a pretty much tried and tested formula, and that Meriva that's just coming by now, just to try to have another way of doing it, and it just didn't really have the desired effect. That's not to say that those attempts weren't meant to have been tried, that they shouldn't have tried it. There's different ways of doing things. And then you've got all those fantastic fin-tail cars of the 50s and 60s, like those big old Cadillacs and Plymouths.
After 500 yards, leave the roundabout at the fourth exit and follow the A19.
And just muscle cars left, right and centre with all their different designs and shapes and different ways of trying to go about things. And some of those philosophies have stuck, some of them have gone. For instance, we've lost the incredible tails on the Cadillacs that but in some ways they tried to bring them back with the recent generation CTS and CTSV, which were a valiant attempt. Didn't quite go according to plan, but nonetheless they were things to be tried. But where everything's changing is under the hood, under the bonnet. For years it was just a big engine, no forced induction. Then Saab came along, as did the Japanese motor industry, and went, well, actually turbocharging is the way to go. So Saab really started the turbo generation of the 80s. I don't know who was honking at who, but Saab really started that turbocharging.
Please turn third left.
Really started that turbocharging drive and innovation, and I haven't caught on that the. I haven't come around this way for a few weeks in the evening, so I haven't realised that the slip road I want to exit onto, last time I came round, it was partially closed.
Follow the road for 1 mile.
Where we didn't know what the best thing was to put under the bonnet. Now we're in this unique position. As I was saying, Saab Turbo brought in the Turbo Mad era. Turbos have come and gone. Superchargers have been and gone. Superchargers and turbochargers have been in and out of motorsport, notably Formula 1 and touring cars and Trans Am as well. Through the Tyne Tunnel. I actually don't know what the footage is going to look like going through the tunnel, but you know, the car has never found itself in this position for years. I know my dad has had such a hard time adjusting to this. Now, I admittedly did have a hard time adjusting to it as well initially, but this recent revolution in the change of engine layout, for years if you tried to get my dad to go down in engine size, like, oh no, he would not do that. 1.6 diesel, forget it, absolutely not. Now you wouldn't think twice about going for one of those. That's the car behind me with his headlights. And then trying to get people to lock off cylinders and say, you know, small forced induction is the way to go. Ford have been pioneering it with the EcoBoost, and they really are the ones who really made the most progress. Whilst VW tried to put Blue Motion for a long time, it never quite really took off as it should have done. So Blue Motion died a death. You got Blue Efficiency from Mercedes, you got Drive from Volvo, Ford EcoBoost, he's got Booster Jet, Honda have got Power Boost, I think is what it's called, but they're all coming to some sort of convergence on what the engine layout needs to be, at least for the foreseeable future. So for years you wouldn't have convinced most people to go below a 1.8 litre engine with four, that didn't have 4 cylinders, and now we're producing engines. To put this into perspective, Ford have an EcoBoost engine, 1 litre 3 cylinders, been spanked up to 140 horsepower, or it's 140 PS, either way it's 140. In 2005, my dad had a Volvo V70, 2.4, 5 cylinders, only made 140 horsepower. So it had nearly 2.5 times the displacement of the Ford engine, and nearly double the cylinders, but it didn't make the same power. Don't get me wrong, it was a lovely engine.
Bear left soon and continue to follow the A19.
Don't get me wrong, it was a lovely engine, made a gorgeous sound, it really responded to when you needed to go. The automatic gearbox in it seemed to suit it very nicely, but nonetheless, it's now old hat. It's not
follow the A19.
Now, when I've mentioned the engine before on here, I might have talked about it, where at the time Volvo had 3 engines. You had two at 2.4, one was 140 horses, one was 170, and you had another one that was a 2-litre turbo at 180 brake horsepower. The 180 brake
Please bear next left.
was more torque because, well, it was a turbo, and turbos generally make more torque. But anyway, what I've been saying, so yeah, the engine in the Volvos was not particularly efficient. It could have been so much better, but you know, at the time it was class leading. So all we've really done is we've just made our engines more efficient. We're talking about thermal efficiency and the like. Speed up to that time. We've talked about thermal efficiency and changing what the engine can and can't do, or what it should and shouldn't do. We've talked about that for years, and people have tried reinventing it. People have tried biofuels, so synthetic petrol, synthetic diesels. Now I think, to be honest, those biofuels will be the way we will go, because if you think about it, whilst everyone says, oh, we will not bring in legislation so we will not sell an electric car before this, like, well actually, what a pointless vehicle, G-Wagon. But anyway, people are saying, oh, we're going to bring legislation that means you can't sell an electric car, you won't be allowed to sell one, can't sell one, so on and so forth. You're not allowed to buy a combustion engine car for however many years. But the thing is, the amount of vehicles that are out and about that are combustion, you can't just bring in that sort of legislation like that. And actually, remember how for years we were told to buy diesel, go buy a small economical diesel
After 400
car.
yards, leave the roundabout at the first exit and follow Coast Road.
But for years everyone was told you need to buy something small, something diesel, something efficient, and you know, the automotive manufacturers responded. They
Leave the roundabout at the first exit, then take the next right turn.
They made some decent improvements in the world of miles per gallon and in terms of efficiency, and like I said, the thermal efficiency, torque, engine displacement to power, and so on and so forth. But
Please bear next right. Prepare to bear right soon and continue to follow the A1058.
The automotive industry has responded to every requirement that's been set down to it. So it's improved where it's going to improve, more efficiency.
Bear right after 400 yards and continue to follow the A1058.
Match the gap, lift off, let him out. That's it. A bit closer again, just so the other car.
Please bear next
Like
right.
say next to me he's trying to do. Taxi driver, thank you for doing absolutely nothing to aid the stereotype of taxi drivers, especially given how many of them actually do drive.
Bear right
properly,
after
especially
400 yards
given-
and continue to follow the A1058.
Absolute dick. Seriously, what an absolute dick.
Please bear next right.
But, so what was I saying? Yes, the
Follow the
automotive...
road for 1 mile.
Shut up! The automotive industry has responded to every requirement that's been set down to them. So they have improved efficiency where they need to improve efficiency, improved miles per gallon where they need to improve miles per gallon. They've made cars, let's say, have better thermal efficiency, have better turbo efficiency, better torque, made out of more sustainable materials, made them more recyclable at the end of their lifespan. But this legislation that wants to bring in environmental impact it's got on the
There's
bits.
a bear left soon.
Environmental impact on the bits that are in the car.
Bear left after 400 yards and follow Red Ball Drive.
That's right. Car's sat nav is just got a mind of its own some days.
Please bear next left, then take the next right.
I always think it's so much further up than it actually is. I always think it's bloody miles. That's where I keep
Please
going
turn
wrong.
next right.
Interesting point for just any other video that we're going to make. That is part of the thing about driving. You've got to learn that you make mistakes as you go.
Clues on the way if you need them, but
You've got to learn to make you make mistakes as you go, and you learn all the time. The big thing about driving. But anyway, how do we know that the environmental impact of what the electric cars are going to have? Because obviously they're trying to make them nice and lightweight, which is always a good thing because that needs to improve range. But the problem is, it's all very well saying the car's electric doesn't put out any CO2, etc., etc. But what about the environmental impact in making the car? Never mind making the... Well, actually, we need to factor in making the electricity, because that is quite often the elephant in the room when it comes to electric cars.
Follow the road for 3/4 of a mile.
That is often the elephant in the room when it comes to electric cars. People don't want to know that actually the electricity being put into them to fuel them is not as friendly as it may seem. And as much as companies like certainly in the UK at least, a lot of energy companies are trying to make big that we get most of our energy from wind farms and solar panels and so on and so forth, like, there's still a reliance on things like coal and oil fired and steam fired power stations. The electricity would be nice and clean if, for instance, say we're driving through this nice area. I wouldn't mind having a house around here, aside from trying to get on the road, or off the road, on the road, whichever way you want to put it, trying to put the car away for the night, and then trying to get into it and away to work the next day. But it's but none of the houses, unless you paid for them, have solar panels on them. What would be the best way to try and, which would aid in this mantra of we're trying to get more electric cars and more green energy? Every house has to have a solar panel. Every house has to have a small wind turbine or gravity battery or something like that, because then you're aiding towards the charge. Now, a lot of electric cars, where they can, do have some solar panel elements on them. There is a... oh crap, I can't remember the name of the company now. Saw it on Top Gear. I meant to share it onto... I think it was on Top Gear page or /drive, but I didn't share it because that was during... I won't say the blackout over Christmas, but it was during a phase where it was like, it is just not practical, as opposed to I just needed some me time and didn't want to faff on posting stuff.
You will arrive at your destination after 300 yards.
So there is Sarah. The unique position the car finds itself in at the moment, as in the shape's probably not going to change, but what goes under the bonnet is obviously up for contention, which is not something that we've probably seen since the car was invented. And there's no right, at the moment there isn't really a right way or a wrong way, aside from people saying that petrol and diesel is bad. And I forgot that this is so badly painted out on the floor.
You want to be behind the dark picture?
That's left out here, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. That could have been done with being put on the floor and little.
Yeah, they
Or
need to
signposted.
repaint. They need to repaint it.
But
cars, they're like, I don't think we're ever going to go away from fuel cars, because although like I would say electric cars are actually pretty good,
Well, I was just
I
saying,
just
as
say like I can foresee so many more problems with them, like things for the likes of taxi drivers, like, oh right, actually I can't take another fare, I've got to go and charge my car, like
Turn right after 300 yards.
I mean, I
and
think,
follow
to be
the
honest-
A1058.
until fast charging arrives, or
I mean, obviously they will probably potentially fix that problem, but it's just one of those things people are going to think. And if there's a way of making a synthetic fuel that's like petrol or like diesel, but doesn't give off the emissions and doesn't harm the environment, it might be just as good to keep cars the way they are, just with this more synthetic fuel.
well, what the point I was just discussing, just I was turning into to get you, is whilst electric cars are good, and they go, yes, there's no emissions, but the problem is, it's like, what about the emissions in getting the stuff to make the batteries, the emissions in making the electricity?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that is saying to go.
Where the van is.
Please
Go on.
turn second right.
Ah, that's saying you can't turn right down there.
You can't turn right, go down there, but it's yeah.
Yeah, that's all. But I was saying, you know, you've got at the moment, whilst certainly in the UK, most of the energy companies are saying we get electricity from tidal power, wind power, solar power. The problem is we still rely on the good old-fashioned fossil fuel fired power stations. It's not a bad thing as such, but actually then suddenly makes your electric car claim being sort of, you know, wholly fuel efficient and so clean,
It's
so super clean.
it's not really, when you think about it, when you have to break it down to how each part's made, then no, it's not. But the actual
Well, I need to try and get around here, but I don't know where she's trying to go.
but she'll want to go up and go thingy, but she can't move because car's there.
Right,
That's why.
that was not very well done by me again either.
It's that junction. This road layout is crap. But like I was saying, like when you break like anything, especially in nursing, sometimes when you like break things down to the basic
Turn
elements,
right after 300 yards.
sometimes you're like, sugar, that's not actually right. But the actual process and what you do is right. So in that sense, the car, when the car's on the road and it's doing the job of being a car, then it is
Please bear
completely
next right.
fuel, you know, like it is completely efficient,
Completely efficient,
nice and clean, nice and good for the environment. It's just making them, which I mean, it. For the
Right, but yeah. But the other elephant in the room, which I've just touched upon on the video I was editing today, which should be already up, I think now. In the We Answer What is Regenerative Braking. The big elephant in the room with any vehicle that you buy, it's only as efficient as the driver. So whilst you can have electric or hydrogen or whatever other weird and wonderful concoction you can think of, if you're not driving it efficiently, then you might as well just be setting fire to everything, for all I care. If you're not if you're not lifting and coasting, if you're not using, for instance, on the electric car or the hybrids, using the regenerative braking systems, then what is the point? It baffles my.
It's like anything. If you don't do it right, you're doing it wrong.
Pretty much.
I know where we are now.
It's okay, because I don't have a clue.
It's taken us towards town.
Right. Yeah, so it's only as efficient. The car's only as efficient as you drive it. But all the stuff they need to make the nickel cadmium for the batteries, unless they find a better way of making the batteries, they're not going to be any good. But then you need to be able to also have things like swap out batteries and things like that for the for fast charging, like you mentioned, say for instance a taxi driver. Unless the taxi driver is doing it as this is just spending money, shits and gigs money, so it doesn't matter if he misses a few fares. Which then in what you got to question, what other source of income has he got, and how do I get onto that source of income?
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, the other thing that I think is quite promising, but again, it's not actually as efficient as you'd think. I also think hydrogen's a good way to go, but you need a lot of electricity to separate the oxygen and hydrogen molecules from each other in water. So the electrolysis process is not actually super efficient in any way, shape or form. Are we really only 10-15 minutes? It looks miles on everything.
It's miles on maps, but actually if you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, you get from A to B in Newcastle very, very quickly.
Well, I've spent most of my time when we've been living up in Newcastle going back to Middlesbrough, so
yeah.
I personally think the way forward on the car front is actually a mixture between a few different things. Now, the hydrogen, people have tried it as the hydrogen generator, so it generates electricity, which is a bit like the Fisker Karma, where you put petrol in. You've got a petrol engine, but it's not actually being used for propulsion in the sense of what I am now. It's being used to generate electricity, which might be the best way to go. In fact, it might be how cars have to go for a little while. I think some sort of hydrogen hybrid is probably the best way to go. So a bit like a Toyota Prius, but just instead of a petrol unit, it's a hydrogen unit, and I think that'll be about as efficient as you're going to get. Unfortunately, I think the other thing, regardless of what they change the car power to, there's something that needs to drastically change, which I think I mentioned in one of the electric car videos, or when I was talking about the electric car and the gearbox a couple of years ago now. And the thing is, a lot of people will. Now, this will stop when they put more AI in vehicles. But it's until we've got AI in cars that can sort of level it out and stop people from doing things like that. A lot of people drive like the throttle is just a switch. Not that it can vary. The throttle is something of variable position. It's just the way the road lines. So with electric cars, you've got zero torque from 0 RPM. You've got all torque from 0 RPM. In the petrol car, you've got to build up to it, but so many people just drive with their foot flat to the floor that you're going to get people potentially just accelerating electric cars at dangerous speeds. That the problem will be, I appreciate, the problem will always be speed, especially when it comes to people, the car Olympics of people versus car. But you're going to then have people accelerating harder than they've ever anticipated, and potentially going to have more people just not knowing how to respond to it. Now, if you can get a driving instructor that can teach you in something that's electric or hybrid, then you might be taught how to control it. Although your instructor should be teaching how to manage your throttle anyway, and I can't go over there. There's no space. You can honk how long we want, mate. There's no space.
You will be able to go in a second because those lights have changed now.
Oh, someone behind was honking.
Oh, I know, but you can go now because
I've got to let that VW out first. Because it says green does not mean go.
Yeah.
100 yards.
I feel like I'm doing a naughty thing, staying in this lane the whole time. But
No,
it's
you
okay,
can-
right?
Oh, because you need to go underneath. Well, we need to go over the
Then
top.
left on
You'll know where
400
we
yards
car in a
follow
second.
the A167.
I've got to come. Ah, yes, we've come over.
We come over it. We come
Central motorway. don't
this
we?
central motorway. Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. You watched me learn today. So I need to stay in Lost Flame, really, don't I? Or just follow that round.
Just
Then left
follow what this
onto
says, because I'm not sure which
150
way it'll take you.
It's one.
The thing is with the cars as well being on what goes under the bonnet, I think as well it's gonna end up down to preference. Like
You think we're going to see it?
government preference, I think it's gonna be a case of it's all gonna go down to politics, and it's not like there's a lot you can do about it, but I think a lot of it is gonna go down to what governments think they'll be able to do and what they'll allow scientists and engineers to experiment with.
That, I think, you're probably not too far wrong there, although it's going to be what they think they can get away with taxing the most.
Well,
Still politics, but even politics oversimplified.
yeah,
I think we'll end up with we'll have a new sort of petrol diesel battle,
yeah.
but as to which one will win, I mean, I wouldn't mind having an electric car myself, and if I can afford it, I'd like the next car to be hybrid in some way, but at the end of the day, if you haven't got the money,
Prepare to bear right soon and
Yeah.
continue to follow the A167.
if you haven't got the money, then there's not a lot you can really do about it. Peter wants to get an electric car, but he's got the money to buy himself a nice petrol car. I think he'll end up with a stock box of an electric vehicle.
But it's
Bear
the same
right
as my
up to
uncle.
300 yards
He
and
wa-
continue
he-
to follow the A167.
You wouldn't have been
Why not? No, A1.
Bear right after 50 yards.
That's right, because then he'll chuck some.
yeah, just continue, just follow the mini.
I know I'm a logical thinker, but sometimes half these road layouts are
No,
just-
this road layout is that the Morrison's? It's a fucking Morrison's roundabout. This roundabout, this layout it's much better than it was when it was a bloody roundabout. I can tell you that much. But it's still confusing. What I was going to say? I was going to say my uncle wants a hybrid or something like that, but even he's like, he seriously has to think. He's seriously thinking about it because he's like, can I actually afford it?
Well, the Hyundai Kona is quite
Well,
quite
that's what I-
affordable.
After 300 yards, leave the
I think that's what he
roundabout at the
wants.
second exit and continue to follow the A167.
That Hyundai Kona is it's sort of a game changer in many aspects, but I mean, if you look at things now, a Renault Zoe is something like 20,000 last time I looked at one, because when I was helping my brother look at a car we considered a Zoe, because he would like to have electric, but that's a lot of money. When I can get a Baleno for 11,500 when they've got the sale on, or you can just get an entry one for 11,500.
Leave the roundabout at the second exit.
Never mind what you can get in second-hand land or anything else. It's like, well, why would you? I think the ultimate problem maybe is what lies under the bonnet.
After 300 yards,
It's what-
leave the roundabout at the second exit and continue
can
to
they-
follow the A167.
What can they put under the bonnet that keeps it affordable?
Yeah, I think that is true. Completely what you said there. Because everything seems to be priced out of contention for
Leave the
most
roundabout at the second exit.
Well, I mean,
normal
a few years ago,
families.
Things that even just normal petrol cars that keep being priced out of big contention. A few years ago, when we were looking at a Subaru, that actually looked like we could have afforded
We probably could have afforded that and comfortably afforded it a few years ago, but
without a loan. But now they've moved the price point.
yeah, stay in the middle in for Kingston Park.
Now they've moved the pricing point. I know.
You just
My brain's been blown to pieces. Like a I think like a lot of people, as hard as I try when I come to new places, and try not to rely on the sat nav too much, etc. For that sort of thing. It's just
Sometimes it's
so hard especially because of government cuts. Half the road layouts, as in where they should be saying nice and painted, nice and far in advance,
Leave the roundabout at the second exit. Then leave the roundabout at
laid
the
out.
second
But
exit.
anyway, back on what we were saying, because we're nearly finished. I'm not recording on the way back, aside from obviously just me dash cam. Wait, you dozy cow. Obviously dozy cow. That's
You were
so
on about.
rowdy. But what was I saying? Yeah, the fact that we could have had a Subaru a few years ago,
Leave the roundabout
or we
at the
could have had
second exit.
probably could have stretched to a
be
Ford
honest,
Mondeo
we-
or something of
we-
that nature.
Yeah.
And now we just can't. That's just petrol power. Never mind.
After 300 yards,
Never
leave
mind.
the roundabout
Actually, no,
at
I
the
want-
first
I want
exit.
an e-box
Then
or
take the
Subaru,
next
or I
right
want-
turn immediately.
Or I want the new generation of EcoBoost that's teamed up with something hybrid. That's just not gonna
yeah.
be possible. But I think whatever happens with the electric car or where the car stands now, it's going to come down to whatever's cheapest to go under the bonnet. There will be, to a point, there will be a war. I'll call it a war because in some ways it always was between petrol and diesel. There'll be a war, an argument between petrol, diesel, electric, hydrogen. But I think it'll be far more intense than petrol, diesel always was, because really, diesel was always for your commuters, and people do a lot of
Leave the
motorway driving.
roundabout at
Petrol
the first exit.
is more
Then
for
take the next right turn
people who actually
immediately.
don't want to have to deal with a clackety car all the time. Well, we'll begin to wrap this up. So, I mean, have you got any final points on it, or or is it just a keep it cheap?
Just keep it cheap.
Ditto.
Cheap and cheerful.
And keep cheap the buy, cheap the insurance, cheap the tax.
Yep.
But well, I thank you for
Turn
watching
right
today.
after 150 yards and follow Belvedere Parkway.
Hope Gimli hasn't annoyed people too much. But hope you all enjoyed this video. I might make some more of this style. There actually participated today, which last time we did one, she shook her head at me and was like, no, absolutely not. And that was only driving around South Shields, but I needed the navigator today. So drive safe, look after yourselves, and we will see you, or certainly I will see you in the next one.